Welcome back to this second segment with Pengury's legendary Miller Bugliari. I'm John Cerruto, and this is Coach's Corner. And Coach Bugliari, we talked about a lot of things in segment one, and one of the things we touched upon is a book that was put together on your wonderful 8 decades at Pengury.
Well, it was started, I was going to do just the teams. I thought it was a legacy that I should do where we discuss each team and send out some kind of a booklet or something, and some of the alumni got a hold of it, and they thought it'd be great to tell old stories and have some laughs and talk about camp and talk about teaching and talk about other things. And so it's been kind of not, I don't want to say a hit, but it's been popular with some of the alumni because it's well written by Tom Baer and input from Gil Rosner and George Ellis, who did some of the sketches, and everyone who's gotten it seems to enjoy it. So.
All right, so listen, what would be a very surprising part of Miller Bugliari's life that is revealed in this book that the common person probably wouldn't know?
Well, I thought when I was at Pengury in college, I often thought I was going to be a stunt man, or I always liked movies and always had a decent sense of humor. And so I would go out and around in the 50s and make movies, home movies, before a lot of people did it. And we had some great capers where we would, pretend to hold up a gas station or do this and that. And we had a lot of laughs. And so some of the guys that were in the capers got the book and get a big kick out of it. But, little small stories about little things that I think you might not be able to do today, but you could do then. Just kind of pranks. The other things that I think some of the different things besides coaching, the teaching, how important it was to me, how some of the extra things like working with the Giants or like a minor extra in the Metropolitan Opera were little things that I always saw some of the best performers in the world do something. I thought it was fascinating.
So again, looking at world-class performance,
yeah.
which you greatly appreciate being a coach.
Seeing close up, yes.
Miller, you end up acquiring a camp up in Maine that really had a nice run. Yeah. Many people from northern New Jersey and maybe beyond northern New Jersey attended it. Tell us something about Waganaki.
Well, it was started in 1919, and I purchased it from Vince Lesneski, who was my basketball coach, with a couple of other Pingree people, and they, for either marital reasons or family reasons, couldn't continue, so I continued for about 14 years. Really challenging, but a lot of fun. Again, you're dealing with people's most precious commodity, their children, and I put in programs that I thought were good, making sure everybody obviously learned to swim, but sailing and overnight camps, and made it a camp that we drew a lot from Summit and Short Hills. And originally started, we got a lot of Pingree people, but then we, because the programs are pretty good, I thought we got people from all over, kind of, so it worked out
Did
well.
you have sessions to the camp, or was it just one
No, it was originally one session, and when I took over, I realized in order for people to get a look at the camp and the new director, we should do a half season, and that became popular. The only thing I would say to the parents is if he likes the camp, then he should really stay. And so, what was happening then, the other camp directors were a little mad that I did this, but what was happening then is people were looking at specialty camps, basketball, soccer, football, training, all these things were coming in. So in a way, we were a little ahead of things, saying, okay, you got a long 3 months vacation, 3.5 weeks at camp, good foundation, then you do something else after that. So it worked out pretty well. So we got a half season and a full season.
Now, when this book was being put together originally, many people came to you and wanted you to write a book. Word got out, and other alum took charge and put this together.
Yeah.
Now, how did that feel? Did you feel like you were out of control of telling your story, or?
No, they were very good about it. It's amazing the number of people that they saw about it, which I thought was great for Pingree too. It allowed people to express and go back in time with some fond memories and a few laughs. So it really was good. And then the author covered the teams without me saying much about it. He would interview the captains or an assistant coach at the time. So I was really removed from, unless there was a controversial thing, removed from the process. And so once the first preliminary copy came out and people started to read it, they really liked it. And again, you'll enjoy it. It's not just about me. It's about teacher and coach and all the other people that mixed in and were part of Pingree and other things camp and.
But when you look through the book and you see all of the aspects of life that you took part in, evidently, Miller, you did not shy away from trying things. You lived adventurously.
Yeah, I think I got more confidence in college. I had 3 amazing roommates, all had either NFL or Major League Baseball contracts, and I wasn't going to get a soccer contract, although I played in the local Italian league for 5 years. But these guys were afraid of nothing, and either you joined and said, I'm going to try this and I'm going to do that, or you didn't, and we'd wrestle and box and do everything we could, and that just it was a great situation. But you're right, those are the times to try things, right?
Well, your camp also carried over into a multi-activity type camp.
Yeah.
We look in today's world, and we look in the sporting world today, especially on the lower level. What is your feeling about the multiple sport athlete versus the specialized athlete?
Boy, that is probably the question of the year. I really think that you miss something by not having, say at Milburn or at Pingree, at least two. Maybe you can't do 3 sports anymore. John, I don't know about you. You probably could do 3. I did 3 because you did 3 in those days. But I always thought if you could get 3 or 2 different coaches in high school, or maybe as you go up, maybe a couple in every sport, I think that's a great learning situation. I do think if you're such an exceptional athlete, maybe if you throw the ball 95 miles an hour in high school, maybe you ought to think, if that's what you want, to think about how you could maybe get a chance to play in the big leagues if you wanted. But to think that everybody's going to be a big league pitcher or a striker in soccer or an NFL tight end is not going to happen. So I think parental and school guidance to say, maybe you ought to evaluate what you're doing and look to play in college and go from there. Wrestle in college or whatever you're going to do.
Your answer is so consistent with previous coaches that we've had, coaches that have had 30, 40 plus years in the professional and the high school level. And it's interesting what you said, the influence of maybe 2 coaches, maybe 3 coaches, their influence, not as much the sport, but that whole thing that we talked about in session 1, here in segment 1, that tie-in, of that impact from when a coach does it right. Miller, I look back again and, you see your life and, you have so much wisdom. If somebody were to come to you and say, Coach, you know what, I'm confused, but I'm thinking about getting into education and coaching. A, in today's world, would you encourage that? And B, what type of advice would you give that individual to be able to climb the ladder and get the experience?
Well, I think that most importantly, depending on what level you want to get involved in, is to make sure that you bring your credentials with you. In other words, if you're going to coach in college or teach in college or teach in high school or junior high, whatever it is, to make sure that you're well prepared for it, but also to evaluate what you want and then see if it meets up with your verdicts. So what I mean by that is, if you're going to teach and coach in high school, you can evaluate after the year whether it's the right place, or the right sport, or do you enjoy doing this? And you know, it's a great question, because over the years, I don't know how many people I've seen who really weren't sure what they were going to do and loved teaching and continued, and others who said, no, this is not for me. I get some satisfaction, but I've either got to make more money, or I'm not happy with the way things are going, or whatever, whether it's Pingree or Milburn High or wherever. So if it's worth, you know, a lot of people then today come out of business when they're 45 and try to teach. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, because you've missed 20 years of what things are all about if you haven't kept your hand in by coaching or something like that.
Well, you did mention before in our previous discussion, we talked about the importance of having passion, because if you break down the hours of what a coach puts in, it's not about money.
No, it's not about money. No.
Did you ever aspire to go to a different level beyond high school?
Well, I think the chances that I had maybe working out were in college, and it would have meant not teaching but doing some other jobs in those days, in the 60s and 70s, other jobs that I wasn't too happy with. I don't think I would have been happy doing. So the challenge for me was you know, keeping the Pingree program going, and I don't know what it would have been like to go to college. Yeah, there are always those opportunities there, and some people take it, and some people are very happy, and some people are not. Again, it's such a different world, and today that's all you do would be coach and recruit and run camps, you know, the soccer camps and things. I don't know whether that would have been enough for me. I don't know.
So when we look at coaching, and you know, again, we had a previous discussion, we talked about coaching different levels, even on the youth level, which I know you have coached at times. Then you have the high school, the college, the pro. Each one of them brings unique characteristics and abilities. On the high school level, we talked about, you just mentioned the college level, you have a lot of recruiting to do. You're really bringing older people in. Professionally, you know, it's profession, it's your job, it's performing. But on your level, you have to be concerned about more than just the sport. What are some of those things?
Well, I think that in a good situation, a high school situation, obviously you're worried about the fit of the child on the team, the player, and then your obligation to make sure that you try to help them with their college decision, because at a Milburn or a Pingree, most of the kids are going to go to college. So it's a constant. I think we talked about this earlier. Are you going to play in college for the 4 or 5 guys that could? Do you want to play Division III or Division I? And are your marks? You want to go to Harvard, or your marks good enough, or you want to go to Middlebury? Let's get things going. I always thought that was important for a coach to do. And then the other thing is, once you get out, how can I help in those early years when you get out if you need a lead into a job? A guy came in the other day from Harvard, and he was wanted to intern in the summer, and he mentioned one of the banks that my son Anthony was at, and I said, well, at least look up Anthony and see if you're ready, and it worked out perfectly. I mean, he was, you know, he interviewed with Anthony and other people, but you know, he was a sharp kid to begin with. But some of that's helpful too, and a lot of people have their own leads and everything, so that's fine too. But we thought it was good to try to help.
All right, now listen, you've had many coaches in your life, many assistant coaches. Now, but you've also had a very loyal and supportive could be your head coach, your wife Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Elizabeth and her role all these years, besides being the mother and the husband of Miller Bugliari. She is a coach's wife.
She's been absolutely fantastic, both as a 24-year-old bride who was forced into doing the ordering of food and running the horseback riding at camp. She was a rider and comes from a Morristown family, the Budds, who were big Chatham landowners way back. I mean, way back. Her brother, Boyce Budd, won the Olympic gold medal in crew in 1964, and just very supportive of athletics and me. Made sure that kids played as many sports as they could. She still goes to the games. She's at Kent Place School. But yeah, you can't coach 56 years without having your wife support it. So we tied yesterday, and I called her when we got on the bus. We tied. What do you mean you tied? And I said, we tied. Which gets me mad. I said, man, we could have lost too. But, yeah, and that's a great question, John, because yeah, you need that kind of, when you're down, you need somebody to say, hey, you know, it's still a game and this and that. And, you know, it makes for a great marriage and sometimes a lot of laughs because when the kids would play, if one of the kids didn't get in as much as he thought he should, and this is in the book, they'd go home with her rather than wait around for me, which is okay. It means I was pretty fair most of the time, tried to be.
Well, I'm sure it's in some ways more challenging coaching your own kids, of course, especially on an elite team like you have and high visibility. But you had the privilege and the pleasure of coaching 3 of your sons. We were talking before, you have 10 grandchildren, and you're on the cusp of possibly coaching a grandson.
Yeah, that would be interesting, yeah.
So you could have your wife and your son a little
yelling
concerned with you.
Why'd you do this? Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
How was that for them, though, Miller? Did you ever feel that they had, I mean, they obviously did. They had a little excess pressure being the son of the coach and a great coach and so visible. How did they handle that well?
Yeah, they were extremely good about it. And the other thing, John, that I was happy with is that they played other sports too. So I felt better about that. They were still playing club soccer or club hockey or lacrosse or anything, but they were able to play other sports where I felt I wasn't the only guy evaluating them. So, and they all played quite successfully the other sports. So, you know, that just made me feel a little bit better rather than just doing soccer, we'll say.
Well, I think you reference some of that in the book, of course, and you see the different pictures. Did you find, Miller, that there was a certain point in your life where you might have second-guessed your profession? Was there a period where you thought maybe you should be trying something else, or was this something that you just loved all the time and never looked at beyond it?
No, that's another good question. I never really, you know, you always look out sometimes the grass looks greener somewhere else or anything, but you know, Pingree's been very fair to me and, you know, has always taken care that, you know, I was looked after, which is good. You know, you appreciate it. I've had 7 heads of school.
It's a lot of
and
change.
You begin to say, you know, maybe one of these is not going to, and yet they've all been helpful, and I think I've been helpful to them. So.
Well, you also do a lot of work somewhat as an ambassador for Pingree. You do a little traveling. You meet with alumni. Tell us about some of those events and some of the things that you do with that.
Well, years ago, they needed help with the alumni, and so I did that, and I gave up being department head, science department head, and I think I taught one section, and then I did some alumni, and I started to do parties in L.A., San Francisco, Chicago, Florida, and started to gather kind of a boarding school feeling for Pingree. And then we were in Hillside, and we needed to raise $25 million in the 70s to move the school. And so they asked me to help with that. And so even though I was not asking, I would help with who we should ask and what we should do. And a group of longtime Pingree people helped do that. And then we had another campaign to raise 50 or 60 million, and I helped with that. And now we have one we're completing for $60 million. Now, this in a private school tries to stop you from being tuition driven when you think about it, and all the things you need today and the size of our campus, and we need some kind of help from the outside. It's like a small college in that way. So I don't ask for any money, John. I'm not the guy that does that, but I will go and run an alumni show and tell them what's happening. We've just renovated the science area. We're going to build a new field house. We've renovated the Short Hills campus, and again, endowment for scholarship kids. Because today, maybe the pastor at a church couldn't send his kid to Pingree, so you got to make sure there's scholarship money.
Well, you're way too modest, but that field house is, of course, being named in your honor. And you talk about that great alumni. It's a very generous alumni, a lot of successful people, and they haven't forgotten Pingree. And yet, the mission of Pingree is to still stay balanced. You just don't want it to be just for the elite financial individual. And
right.
I think that's what
Correct.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
To try to keep that nice social balance.
So if you're qualified academically and also have some extra thing to give to Pingree, whether it's music or sports or things, that Pingree will evaluate what you can do like a college. And then we've raised a lot of money to help people come to school.
Miller, you've had a lot of successful alumni, a lot of high-profile alumni. If you want to mention some names or don't want to mention it, it's fine. But, at one point, I guess the Red Bull part owner was a Pingree grad. Is that correct? Or was it, am I correct on that?
Well, one of the guys with the old Metro stars,
Right.
Charlie Stilitano, was the general manager, and he was bought into the team too. But one of the graduates who I taught, his brother owns the Minnesota Vikings. Wilf family's a good Pingree family. And you have so many Pingree people doing variety of things. It's great. So
It really is. And what's the enrollment of Pingree right now?
we have 1,000 K through 12, and in the senior class we'd have 100. This is approximate, John. I think of it, say 150 to 160. So you got 80 boys and 80 girls, maybe. So.
And again, Pingree also has been offering summer programs open to beyond Pingree students.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. And the summer programs are important for supplying us with the necessary financing to keep everything reasonably priced. So, yeah.
So Miller Bugliari moves forward, and you move forward down the road here. You continue to coach next year, and you continue to play the role as ambassador, and I guess you do assist the headmaster to some degree?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, I'm a kind of a troubleshooter, if there is trouble, but I think he gets a kick out of a person that's been there that long and then seen. Remember, I've seen all three campuses, the one in Elizabeth, where I went with 12 years, and then my last year we moved to Hillside. We were there for Hilton, and then Hillside was there for 25 years, and then we've been here for 25, 30 years or so.
That went very quickly, Miller,
Yeah.
that last 25, because I remember when you're in Hillside, it doesn't feel that long ago.
We won the Union County tournament. Westfield was undefeated. I remember a night game at Williams Field, and Westfield was undefeated, and I think we had a great day. I think we lost one game that year, and we beat the team the second time we played it. But anyway, we won the county 2-1. I'll never forget it. And as I left, I got on the bus. I said, "Well, what a way to leave the county with a victory." It makes kind of, you feel really good about it. And
then you enter into Somerset
Somerset
County.
County.
And you've won a few of
I
those
mean,
too.
it's a whole new world. But
Yeah.
I mean, You know, nobody had a chance to get back to us in Union County.
Miller, I'm going to put my glasses on for a second, something that I really never do during an interview, but, you know, just, of course, you graduated from Pingree.
Yes.
And, you know, became the varsity coach in 1960. You have a letter of life, Pingree's highest honor, which was bestowed upon you. When was that done?
Oh boy. Maybe 10 years ago.
10 years
Maybe
ago.
10, maybe 15.
Well, and that's a heck of an honor. I look back here at the National Hall of Fame, 4 National Coach of the Year awards, 7 New Jersey Coach of the Year awards. You've been president of the National Soccer Association, New Jersey Coaches Hall of Fame, 18 undefeated season, 20 state championships, every player, regardless of skills on your team. And Miller Bugliari, you have given so much, not only to sport, but to education and to people. You've influenced so many lives, both in Pingree and outside of Pingree, and I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been to have you on Coach's Corner.
Oh, John, you've been great. Thank you. I appreciate it, and you know, to you and the Cerruto family, and for the television group for having me in. It's been an honor.
Well, Miller, it's been our pleasure.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
And thank you for joining this session, 2 segments with Miller Bugliari, Pingree.